Right. Welcome, everybody, to today's flow session. I am Helen Beal. I'm the CEO of the Value Stream Management Consortium. And today's flow session, we're joined by Pavel, who is one of our ambassadors from VS Optima, the CEO and founder of VS Optima. Pavel, would you like to take a few moments to introduce yourself in a bit more detail to the audience? And then we will start talking about simulating value streams.
Sure. Hello, everyone. Exciting to be here. Thank you, Ellen, to organize this. My name is Pavel, founder, CEO, and CEO of VS Optima. 20 years in technology, work in different companies like SaaS, Big Tech, and for the last 10 years prior to founding VS Optima, I spent 10 years working and building the engineering excellence consulting group at Optima Systems. I learned a lot about value stream and engineer productivity, accelerate, Dora, and all this for the last 10 years. Oh, I can hear myself.
Sorry, I was just fiddling with the live stream in the background and it was unmuted. Apologies. Please carry on.
No worries. This is a topic very close to my heart, and value stream management and value stream simulation. So happy to talk and share what I learned throughout my journey.
Fabulous. So I think it's always quite interesting to understand where people first got into something. I can't remember where I was where I first heard the term value stream. I remember my first value stream mapping activity as a consultant with absolute clarity. And I'd never done a value stream mapping activity before I delivered one. Fortunately, I always did value stream mapping pretty much double-handed. So the person I was working with, the other consultant, was very experienced with them, Daniel Breston. So he taught me how to do them. So I remember that. And I remember when I first really heard about value stream management because I was going to the DevOps Enterprise Summit in London in 2019, in the summer of 2019. And I was going on a press pass. I was writing, I still write occasionally, not for a while, but occasionally for InfoQ as a DevOps editor. And that's where I had my press pass to the conference from. And I was going, because I kept on hearing people talking about value stream management. And at the time I had a kind of a ribbon at the bottom of all of my slides that said, it was a DevOps slide, but optimizing the flow from idea to value realization. So I kind of was getting really into it. And actually, that's, if we talk about the genesis of the Value Stream Management Consortium, that was really from that event. It's triggered this whole thing. But Pavel, what about you? When do you remember the term value stream kind of coming into your consciousness?
I believe it was a long time ago, I guess sometime in the university, I read the book Gold by Goldratt, and this is when my journey to lean and value stream management and mapping and simulation started. Actually, after university, I switched completely off that. I was a software engineer, was architect. Then once I became a project manager, I started looking like, why are we always missing the timeline, like due date? It's one kind of event that get me back toward Goldratt and value stream management and analysis of the flow. And during the journey at EPAM, when I running the engineer productivity center, I start really digging into how we can analyze, like, what are the key factors affecting the lead time, affecting the success of the project, affecting the engineering productivity, and so on. And this is where I start like using the value stream mapping as a tool to visualize what is happening. And then maybe another stroke came as the realization that there is a backward flows that add non-linear behavior in the value stream. And this is why I started thinking how we can understand the implication of those backward flows. Yeah.
So a backward flow. Let's talk about upstream, downstream, rework, complete.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially complete and accurate. How do all those things interrelate? When you say back workflow, what do you mean, or backflow?
I mean, the feedback, like a simple example might be defect, right? Engineer can find the defect in a local environment, which is very quick feedback, and it's very healthy. It's still in the context of the job, the task that he or she is working on, and you can quickly fix. A slightly delayed feedback might be when you commit this change and you run on certain specific environment that you cannot replicate on your local machine, it's already delayed. It might be, let's say, run every night, and you need to wait a day. Imagine you have a team of 50 people that commit a lot of code all together, and all of them or some of them get feedback about certain changes in a day. And it might be the case that something is broken, right? And it might be the case that some changes are built on top of other changes, and this is what reworks come into play, right? And the further we delay the feedback, the higher probability is that you need to implement additional rework, which is not planned, right? You already have a task in your backlog sitting, assuming that you have availability and capacity to work on that, but it's not the case, and there is a kind of probability. Again, depends on how delayed the feedback is and how complicated the feature change you are making. Yeah.
I remember for quite a while now, we've known that in the testing world, if we don't fix a defect quite quickly, the longer we leave it, the more expensive it is.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably true of all rework, right? Every time we want to correct something, the longer time we leave, the more other things will have changed. So the more difficult it becomes to unpick and go back to where we were.
Yeah, and add on top of that, the quality of this feedback, right? It might be the case that the defect, you assume that this is defect, but this is maybe configuration in the environment or in the database, which often is the case that the engineers do not own in today's environment and enterprise, where you have a segregation of duties and you have DevOps who handle the infrastructure, and you have I know database engineers who handle database, and you need to coordinate those changes all together. I mean, in ideal world, you have a cross-functional team that you're responsible for all stack of the changes, but it might not be the case. So you can think about another aspect of feedback is the quality. If it's true defect, or it's kind of symptom of the other failure or other issues with the configurations of the application itself.
And I think we're kind of leaning into the conversation about dependencies here. And for me, dependencies are really indicative of how this whole market, this conversation, how this set of practices that we call value stream management are evolving at the moment. Because when we talk about value stream mapping as our previous selves, with our first experiences of value stream mapping, we were typically doing that with a single team, and it would be fairly linear, and we would gain great learnings and understandings and have a great time mapping those value streams. But as we're now in our kind of current selves, what we've learned is that organizations are made up of multiple value streams, and those value streams interconnect and they cross over, and every time they do, it's pretty much always a dependency. And I remember when I was doing a lot of DevOps consulting, you know, that kind of phrase where you say, every frog is an amphibian, but not every amphibian is a frog. It's kind of like every dependency causes a delay, but not every delay is caused by dependencies. But dependencies are never good, I think. And now we're starting to kind of get to this current self, or this where we are in the moment now, I think, is we're understanding value stream management as an organizational management tool. So just kind of reflecting back on what you were saying, what is the role of the dependency? And then I think this might help us then lean into why it's important to be able to simulate what's going on around value streams.
Because sometimes it's too complicated to grasp and really make objective decision and informed decision about the certain improvement that you want to do and what would be the impact of this improvement. I remember first time I realized that I need some simulation tool when I work with the large retail company, focus on the DevOps strategy. And one of executive asked me, okay, you propose me to hold on the current commitment and feature development and invest in test automation infrastructure because it's kind of generate rework that kind of affect our productivity. But should I keep my commitment? Like the gain in the speed that we're going to reach once we implement those changes will be enough for us to fulfill the commitment for the feature development, or should we revise it? And this is when I start thinking how I can understand like what would be the gain of speed Like if we reduce this rework to, I don't know, from 40% to 20%, how fast are we going to be? And this is a question when I realized, look, I need to simulate, and it's not linear. It's Excel is not enough here. So yeah, the complexity and the fact that it's dynamic, yeah, brought me to the topic of value stream simulation.
It is incredibly complex, isn't it? These environments that we're working with. And actually, we've got a question, which I'm going to come back to the complexity in a moment. But the question from Vladis is, are value stream aligned teams the key to single piece flow, in your opinion? So this is great because I think if we look at lean enterprise and the 2.0, this idea of single piece flow and multiple piece flow, how would you respond to that question, Pavel?
I believe we should talk about taxonomy of application, right? The application comprises of multiple components. It might be the case that all components developed by a single team, which is, in this case, we can abstract a single unit flow. If you have multiple teams and multiple value streams, then some time later down the road collapse together to produce this value-added feature or increment of the product, then you have multiple items flowing together and just joining in a specific spot, and then it's delivered. We recently work with the automotive software development team, and they have multiple components. I know, like hundreds of ICU in the car, and each of ICU should have, I know, for a specific feature, small changes, and you need to orchestrate all these changes together, assemble them, and then deliver to the car. So definitely there's multiple pieces involved, but it might be the case that team handles several of the components altogether, and you can abstract sometimes.
I think there's kind of this assumption that the multiple piece flow or the batch flow is like the root of all evil, but I think, as you've just described, it's not necessarily is. I think conceptually getting to single piece flow really helps us to get out of project oriented thinking. So that's great. But there's almost like you go from project batch requirement thinking to single piece flow to agile, and then you almost go again to kind of like you've just described, talking about coordinating those multiple parts, sometimes so that they rejoin together or that they deploy together, or sometimes you might have a piece that's a microservice that is actually used by multiple value streams, for example.
Yeah, and you can add on top of that additional layer of complexity, like probability, right? The world is uncertain. We don't know how long does it take to implement a specific feature. We don't know how many defects we're gonna find. We don't know like whether the environment will be stable enough. So there is this notion of stochasticity in the processes that we also need to take into account. Even though, let's say, we have a perfectly balanced value streams for multiple components, it might be the case that our assumed productivity will be suffered because all those variabilities, they kind of have a cumulative effect at the end of on the entire throughput of the value stream, which also very hard to comprehend. If you do just value stream mapping, you need to do the simulation. If you have highly variable environment, definitely like take a look at the simulation, how you can understand the implications of this variability.
Cool. I'm going to ask you a question in a minute about like the journey that we go through to get involved with simulation. But you mentioned the word taxonomy in the context of the single piece flow, but it is a big topic, the taxonomy discussion. And I wanted to alert the audience today. I know we do have quite a few members in the audience today that are probably already aware of this, but we kind of quite stealthily launched a taxonomy recently that was put together by our consulting huddle. It's more than an MVP, but it's the first iteration. I've put the link into the chat there on both the Zoom and the LinkedIn Live. We'd love your feedback on it. We are building it out and iterating on it all the time. But as it describes in the taxonomy, what we're trying to do is create a single place where people can come for these definitions. As many of you know, we do an annual state of VSM report. This year will be our fourth report. We did some work in 2022 around some micro research, which we rolled into the bigger report around things like the definitions of lead and cycle time, because they are so variable through the market, depending on where practitioners have come from, which is really difficult for everybody to deal with. So we're trying to help by creating a central source for that. And part of the taxonomy we're talking about is the different nomenclature around different types of value stream. And actually, I'm just preparing the survey for the State of VSM report this year, the 2024, which will go live probably next week. And we do have a new question in it, which is about what kind of types or names of value streams people are using in their organization. So some people like to use, for example, business and development or business and digital. I'm not a huge fan of that myself because I think they're all one value stream. If you look end to end from the idea to the customer, it normally encompasses both those parts of the business. And I think kind of perpetuating what I would call the myth that the business is separate from the technology teams is not ideal. So I kind of prefer not to go down that one. But Steve, who's always Pereira, who was on the last flow session, who many of you know, always says, well, if that's what people are doing and it's a stepping stone to somewhere, then that gives it some validity as well. There's also other definitions around things like operational and development value streams. My particular favourite is actually core and supporting. So core being the value streams that feed the customer that pays the bills, and then the supporting value streams that support those. And then in Vladis's question was the stream aligned team, actually the value stream aligned team, which is kind of from the team topologies form of thinking, which we work very closely with. And the value stream or the stream aligned teams in team topologies are the kind of most important, if you like, because they're creating the customer facing value, and the platform teams and everything else is supporting their work. So before we dive into the path to simulation, Pavel, since I went down that route about taxonomy, I'm sure you've got some thoughts to share with the audience on VSM taxonomy in general, and then specific value stream naming types specifically as well.
I believe like value streams, yeah, operational development, this is what I've seen a lot. Customer journey often kind of perceived as a value stream, and I believe it's a valid point. You can look at the customer journey from, I don't know, order, for instance, all the way to the delivery of value realization, and what kind of supportive value streams you need to have in place to ensure that the customer journey works seamlessly. So this is what I see in a lot. Sometimes even processes, like people keep the name of the value streams as a process, though, like process you need to have in place to ensure that the customer journey works seamlessly. So this is what I see in a lot. Sometimes the processes, like people. Is it on my side or your side?
It's fixed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so multiple definition of value streams I cannot say this is really affected the essence, what value stream is about. You have your activities, you have certain metrics, you have a customer, you have a information flow, the value added flow, like the material flow, and whatever you call it, it still reflect the value added activities to satisfy the customer.
We did a whole series. We haven't done one in a while, but me and Steve and Patrice in particular did a series called "Is This a Value Stream?" And I think we started with incident management, and we did release management. We did do "Is a Customer Journey a Value Stream?" And actually, I've put that link in the chat there, and from there, people should be able to get to the other ones as well. But these are really interesting conversations. And again, I tend to be like quite opinionated. People that know me probably won't surprise them. But I'm like, no, that's not a value stream. But as the point you just made, that actually the principles that we use for value streams, which are all about optimizing flow and outcomes, are useful whether you want to argue something's a value stream or not. So, for example, I would argue that incident management isn't a value stream because it is. It's supporting value streams because it's kind of making sure that they're not impacted by incidents, but by itself, it's not a value stream. But of course, we can use all of the principles we have around like identifying delays and bottlenecks and waste to make that better, which will have a knock-on effect of improving the actual value streams themselves as well.
Yeah, for the value stream, you have a value to be delivered, and the incumbent, like customer or user, that get this value, right? And ITSM, you have internal customers, but in the big picture, yeah, it's absolutely true. It's supportive supportive flow
Yeah.
for the value stream.
So let's talk about simulation. Let's imagine then that people are in the audience are kind of where we once were, in that they've heard of value stream mapping. They've probably even done a value stream mapping exercise with one or two teams in their organization or one or two of their clients. It may have been in a physical space, so they may have used walls and post-it notes, or perhaps they were a bit more remotely distributed, so perhaps they used Miro or Mural. Maybe they had a Google Sheet or an Excel spreadsheet on the side to kind of take notes of those processing times and wait times. They definitely did their current state maps, so they understand what they're working with. They probably were surprised to discover, once they'd done the kind of, if you'd like, fragmented, the granular analysis of their value stream, and kind of said, well, that's 4 days, and that's 3 days, and that's 7 days, and that's 2 hours, and added it all up and got to 18 months and gone, and it was 18 months, and had a kind of mind-blowing moment that they actually, like, you know, once they break it down, it did add up to the reality. Maybe they had a little bit of time left in their plan, and they managed to get to something of their future value stream and think about what that could look like. And maybe they had some conversations about the fact that, I don't know, security was giving them a 6-week delay, or they had 3 different change approval boards that were just a pain and not really worth giving them any value. And that's kind of where they got to. So what happens now? Where would you take them into to get, and where is your vision for them in terms of being able to simulate their value streams?
If the simulation of value streams is essential when you try to answer future stated questions. What would be if? For instance, if you have your current state of the value stream and you have metrics, and the team or client wants to understand what would be if they're gonna increase the demand, the number of features that they want. I mean, they want to produce more. What if they're gonna generate more features? Would it be, how many people do they need to hire? Where exactly the bottleneck and constraint? The theory of constraint is super, I mean, amazing by the simplicity, right? You have a one constraint that defines the whole flow efficiency. And this is perfect. At least you know where exactly you need to allocate the capital and efforts to increase the systematically increase the throughput and increase the productivity of end-to-end value stream. So those questions really important, and you can like easily simulate what would be if, I don't know, let's assume we have bottleneck in security. What would be if we're going to change the way how we work with security? Either we have add more people, which is straightforward approach. I wouldn't recommend that. Maybe we can revise the way how we work with security and re-engineer the process, or re-engineer this piece of integration with the value stream. And what are the implications? And it might be a lot of hypotheses around what changes you can implement. And the question is, what changes really make the difference? And you can like look at various options and evaluate them. Like what increase your throughput, what increase your shorten your lead time, what shorten your cost, for instance. It might be also one of the objectives, or maybe multiple objectives. So you can look at the hypothesis and select what exactly you're going to do, what gives you the most impact on the productivity of your value stream.
So how are we training the simulator? Where is it data that we've manually input when we've been doing value stream mapping, or is it integrating with our Jira and our ServiceNow environments, or where's it getting that baseline current state map from?
You can do either manually and calibrate the model manually, or you can leverage various techniques like process mining, agent mining to and also move this data to the modeling and simulation tool. I believe this is important to for simulation is important to understand that the lead time is actually implication of your constraints and the pressure that you putting on the system, how many items you need to process. The more items, the longer lead time would be, right? So the fact that when we do the value stream mapping exercise, we need to recognize this is a snapshot in time, given the current constraints, given the current demand of the organization. And to capture that, so this is a good data point. The lead time that we captured from this data time snapshot is amazing for us to calibrate once you build a model, we don't have this lead time. We have the processing time. How long does it take activities? How many people involved? How many items come into the process every week, for instance, or value stream every week? And we can see what would be the so lead time of the process and map. Okay, is it really what we experience in real life? If it is, then we more or less calibrate. And this type of exercise you can do based on the like data integration, integrate with Jira, or you can do again through the observation and interviews. But for you, the calibration point would be given the demand that you experience in you can easily get from Jira or asking people the understanding of lead time. You can calibrate, okay, whether this is what team organization experience. If it is, then you have realistic model and you can start playing with what if scenarios.
So this conversation we had earlier about the map and the single team, and then the organizational level, would the person that's using the simulation typically be a team lead or a CEO? And can we do things like say, what if we change that dependency that 7 value streams are crossing over on? What that level of complexity, what can we do?
I would love to have value stream architect doing this type of activities. So because he can grasp the all complexity. He is not focused on the specific type of work, and he looks holistically on the end-to-end journey and end-to-end productivity, efficiency of the value stream. For him or for her, it will be easy to collect all this data, build this model, and strategize, okay, what decisions or changes needs to be put in place to improve the system as a whole. So I would vote for value stream architect, who definitely should be in well positioned to do that, or agile coaches who run across multiple teams and see the system as a whole.
I think the whole conversation about roles is really interesting, and it's one that we've been researching in every state of VSM report so far, and will continue to research this year. And most of the people that complete the survey, so they contribute to our report, and I would say most of the people in our membership base at the moment, probably that might be decreasing in a little way because we're getting more and more enterprise team members. So what's happening is those agile coaches are buying membership for multiple people in their organization. But up until quite recently, the majority of the people that were interacting with us were those change agents. So as you say, the agile coach, the DevOps coach, the transformation leads, those kind of people. One of the things we've been really interested in as well, though, is understanding the value stream roles. So where the people have explicitly named value stream in their job title. We ask people as well whether they work in an explicitly named value stream, but also this title. So I think value stream architect is probably the most common out there. We know we've met quite a lot of people that have that title. But it becomes a really interesting one. I'm trying to figure out how to bring this question together in my mind. We know, and actually the next flow session we're going to have that I'll announce, I think I'm scheduled to announce it on Thursday. It's already on our website, I think, is with Chris Coombe, who's another one of our ambassadors. And Chris worked at UBS for 20 odd years and as a ways of working centre of excellence leader in his most recent job. Obviously, he's had quite a few over the couple of decades that he was there. And now he's a consultant working with multiple ways of working frameworks. And we know there's a lot out there. There's Agile, we've talked about, there's DevOps, there's lots of Agile at scale frameworks, there's Lean, there's the theory of constraints. You mentioned Goldratt, of course, which is where a lot of that is coming from. And there's all these different things and they drive different job titles. We've mentioned project, product, kind of circled around that. We know, I've talked about the separation between business and technology. So we know we've got project managers, PMOs, product owners, product managers, all of those kind of people. I think the question that I want to get to is that it's an opinion, and I love one of the things you do a lot is forecasting for the future. And we're certainly going to talk more about your vision of the future in a minute. But from the job role perspective, do you think there is an increasing prevalence of value stream oriented roles in organization? And if so, does it reflect an increase in value stream management being adopted? Is there any kind of relationship or movement in your kind of day-to-day experience going on there?
I believe so. I believe the more definitely there are more people focused on and understanding the value stream concept. It's not often reflected in their job title. It's something that they do on a daily basis, trying to improve efficiency. The more center of excellence appears in organization, like center of excellence in like DevOps, engineering excellence, and so on. So those people driving the efficiency, and they often end up doing the value stream mapping, value stream analysis, and this type of work. So I see the trend, positive trend. I cannot measure it. I believe this is value stream management report that we're doing on a annual basis, so we can get some insights there. But yeah, I can confirm that this is the trend. I see more people doing that, and even beyond like technology field, there are organizations that focus on, in insurance, they also focus on the excellence in their value streams, and let's say claim processing or whatever value streams they have. Yeah, for sure.
More coming. Probably we'll release the next report in October or November when we're going to have Flowtopia in November this year. We've actually got Flowtopia London coming up in September in person at the AWS headquarters ahead of the Fast Flow conference. But in November, we will have a very large virtual event, Flowtopia. Those of you who've been before know that it's in Las Vegas this year. We've decided to make it virtual, make it much more accessible and bigger for everybody. So I hope to see lots of you there. And that's where I will give you the results of this year's research on those roles. I particularly want to see the CVO, the Chief Value Officer. I want to see a CXO level role there. We have got a lot of questions suddenly came in, by the way, so we'll flip to them for a minute before we go to futures and stuff. Diane has said that she's very interested in organisational design. The definition of value stream reference architecture states that techniques are used to evaluate the organisational structure. Where can I obtain more information on those techniques and who conducts these evaluations? So I was just trying to get to the participant list because I'm pretty sure I saw Stephen Walters on here earlier. I did. Stephen, do you want to just pop in the chat if you'd like to chip in for a minute about the VSRA? Stephen and I will be having or we'll be doing a flow session together probably in August. We were just discussing dates actually earlier on Slack, and Craig is actually as well. I'm going to pop you both onto chat if you'd like to join us for a minute. I suppose Pavel, it's Pavel's webinar, so if Pavel wanted to say something about VSRA before you guys chip in, now is the time. Pavel, did you want to respond to that question at all?
For organization, I believe we can look at that if we put the lenses of the simulation, so how those dependencies affect the handover of the activities and contribute to the delays, potential delays. I mean, this is what kind of lenses I would look at that. But curious about Stephen, Craig, please share your
As
opinion.
the authors of the reference architecture, since we have them here, did you want to just chip in for a minute or two?
Yeah, I mean, there's just, I mean, we'll go into more detail when we have our own flow session discussion. I don't want to take too much over from Pavel, but the concept of dependencies has an additional factor in there. When it comes to team topologies, everybody concentrates on the team types. Everybody thinks about those 4 team types. Whereas in fact, and I've had this discussion with both Matthew and Manuel, it's actually the team interactions are probably more important. You have to consider, because that's where the dependencies come in, and the type of team interaction you have, as we've shown within the VSRA, actually determines the amount of disruption you're causing and where you are causing that disruption. So in collaborative mode, it's very 50-50 shared. You are sharing the amount of disruption and you are sharing the cognitive load on those teams. But when it's as a service, the team that is providing that service, most of the load, most of the burden and disruption is on them. Those that are receiving the service just have to take it and use it, potentially through feature flags or something like that. With enabling, it's the other way around. With enabling teams in providing a service through facilitation, then with them, the load is a lot less. It's probably a standard kind of interaction. The onus is on the teams taking on board that facilitation because that is new learning, that's new cognitive load that they're having to take on. So, it depends upon which side of the receiving or the giving that you're getting as to which type of interaction is going to be most disruptive. And it's something that as well that we're looking at the moment is the impacts that that has on cognitive load and the types of work that you're doing. We're talking with Matthew and Manuel about this as well. But yeah, just it's something that has to be considered. And it's something that you can do when you look holistically at a value stream reference architecture, at your entire organization, what that disruption means, because lowering the load in one area by changing the disruption type might make things easier for them, but it has a seesaw effect of creating load potentially elsewhere.
Cool. So let's take that question forward as well to our, I think it's the next but one flow session that we'll have, or maybe the one after that, actually, because I think Steve and I are going to get back together on flow engineering. But let's talk about the techniques to evaluate the organizational structure. And just to really quickly summarize, I think what you were saying there is actually the interaction points are more important than the team types. So we should focus in on that. Thank you, Steve.
And like, sorry, Helen, I just don't want, I really want to encourage Stephen and maybe have a follow-up conversation and explore how we can simulate that, because like in the core of what we do, we have an agency and agent can have different behaviors. So an interaction between teams, this is something like very interesting to find out and simulate that we can quantify the impact of organizational changes in this case and how it's affect the productivity or efficiency of the value streams.
Yeah, I don't know if Craig wants to jump in at that point with the Fine Flow toolkit.
Yeah, hey guys. Yeah, I love this conversation. Yeah, we put this to great effect at SAS Institute in exactly as Stephen described. As Stephen and I were kind of evolving out the VSRA and trying to figure out what it was that made these interactions kind of be important. What we recognized is that the dependencies that happen in teams can create these kind of centralized teams that become very much a bottleneck in everything that you do, and understanding how those interactions then play out in those bottlenecks is really key to then understanding whether or not you need to either remove those teams and break them up and change the way they're architected, change the way the architecture of the system is architected, Conway's law again, to really improve flow, or whether those teams being centralized are really amplifying flow. And it's really understanding whether they're being a bottleneck or whether they're really helping. And VSRA really helped us to focus in on that at SAS. And we reorganized, and since we did that, our flow has gone through the roof. It's just tremendous.
Perfect. I can't wait to see you guys for that flow session in August. I think we can have it. Thanks very much. The questions keep on coming, so I'm going to switch back to those. Fred has asked you, Pavel, do you use Monte Carlo-based simulations?
Yes, you can evaluate the variability impact for sure. Yeah, and it's very easy. You just create the flow, specify the distribution parameters of, let's say, input or processing time, or delay or probability of the backward flows, and you can run simulation like multiple times and see what the confidence interval of the outcome would be.
Perfect. I'm going to skip to Diane's question, come back to Vladis's in a minute, because I think it's going to be a bit more complex answer. But Diane's asked whether we've seen VSM also growing in the public sector. And yeah, the short answer is yes. I'd say that's a bit anecdotal from me today. But again, if you look out for the data that we'll be releasing in this year's research, that is a question that we're asking. So we should have some information. We have always had quite a lot of public sector in our membership. People from mainly the US government and the US Department of Defense in particular, and the UK Army and things. So there's quite a lot going on in there. We did have a government huddle for a little while. We're a bit short on resources at the moment, but Diane, if you're a member or if you're interested in becoming a member and helping us get that huddle, which is basically an informal group of people with a common interest, getting that back together, then please do let me know. And then let's skip to Leandro's question. Sorry, Leandro's question. Apologies for mispronouncing your name several times. Leandro would like to know, do you have some kind of templates or guides for VSM simulation, Pavel?
We have an example for several use cases, like for software for sure. And we even like published recently the large white paper for automotive value stream for software development. I can share the links later. But yeah, once you sign up, you can see the examples, and one of them will be software development. And there are others if you can, if you're interested in other domains. Yeah.
Cool. And then Vladis has asked, would each Kanban board map to a value stream map? How do these associate? So I can start answering that, Pavel, but I'm imagining you're already forming an answer. Or do you want me to start? Happy to.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So for me, a Kanban board is a backlog of work items. So it's the kind of thing that I would expect to produce when I've done a mapping exercise. I'm going to have a load of work items that I want to create to improve my value stream map. But I also get where you're coming from, because you could argue that each column in a value stream map might relate perhaps to a step in the value stream. But it depends how you set your Kanban board up, right? Because you might just have like ideas, refining, waiting, in progress, being reviewed, about to be deployed, in which case that's probably not a value stream. That's just different work in different stages. But you might have set up a Kanban board. So it would say, well, this, if it was a digital value stream, you might say, well, you know, this is in design, this is in build, this is in test, this is being deployed. And that might look more like a value stream map. I think the issue I'd have with it, and that Kanban board could, of course, sit in something like a ticketing system like Jira. And actually, when we look at a VSMP or a value stream management platform, we're often drawing data. And I think Pavel was talking about this as well, drawing data from systems like Jira and other things where our work exists. But normally the Kanban board isn't holding all of the information about what's going on in our value stream. There'll be normally multiple systems. Which is why we normally need those multiple integration points. It's why we have things like the Value Stream Management Interoperability Technical Committee at Oasis that Steve and I and many of the other VSMC members, including Pavel, have been working with as well, to try and work out how to create a common data model to make it easier to access all of those data points, to automatically bring that information together. So I think in summary, what I'm saying is, yes and no. A Kanban board is giving you some insights, but not all of them. Pavel, how else would you put that?
I would encourage people when they create this Kanban board to create additional step like queue. It's ready to be taken to the next step, and limit what is actually happening on the next step. In this case, you can see where the bottlenecks are. If you just map the activities, it gives you like clear picture of what is going on, but it's very hard to find out, okay, where is the bottleneck, where the largest queue, and this is the symptoms that you can take and start improving around.
Yeah, sorry, I put that question away, and now I just want to look at it again. For what you just said, just made me think of something else, which was a value stream. Yeah, because the Kanban board, with a value stream map, what we're trying to do is take that one picture in time, aren't we? It's like a snapshot, and then we're trying to use it to make improvements. Whereas a Kanban board is more of a continuously moving thing that is helping us manage that work, and it's making that work visible, which is what a value stream map is doing as well. But the value stream map, I think, is more oriented about improving that flow rather than just getting the work through the system.
Right. Yeah.
So we have just over 10 minutes left, and we still haven't got to my favourite topic with you. So I'll always remember listening to you talk at Flowtopia in Las Vegas last October, and you did a presentation that kind of blew my mind, because you basically showed us where we're going to be in 10 to 15 years with value stream management. So can you just talk us through that vision you have for kind of where we are right now and the steps that we need to go through, and what the future looks like for people that are trying to practice these principles about flow and value realization?
Yeah, I believe we can look at the to other industries that already embrace certain part of that future, like Industry 4.0, where you have digital twin of the factories, so digital twin of certain dynamic systems where you not only see what is happening, as we have right now with the tools like Desktop or PlaneView or other solutions that gives you a sense, okay, what is the status of my flow? What is the performance indicator of my flow? But also give you elements of causality. So what would be if? So basically not just giving you, I don't know, the activity ratio is the following, the lead time is the following, but what I should do to improve this lead time or shorten it to twice. Or how are you gonna, what should I do if my demand gonna grow twice? Those answers requires to have certain causality and integration of this causal model with the data that you have. In this case, you can predict and find those answers. So I believe this is the future natural evolution of the solutions of value stream management, where you just not go beyond observability and beyond what is happening right now, but you can look at the future. Okay, what would be if we make certain changes, or we don't do any changes, or environment gonna change? I don't know, like we have more demand, or we have new customers that require something else and more picky, or you can come up to the other ideas. So this is essential to, I believe, for future to gain efficiency, and this is what is happening in other industries, and it's inevitably happen in software development world as well.
What's your favorite example of a digital twin? I know we wrote this blog recently. Just popped a link to that in the chat for people to refer to as well. But what's your favorite example of one that you've seen out there? Most surprising, perhaps?
The most surprising was a realization that they exist around us and we use them day-to-day basis. I don't know if in UK you have like Domino Pizza, but basically you have, this is the value stream, right? You see what is happening in the real time, and this is digital twin because it's connected in with the near real-time integration with the system, and you see that, okay, pizza is in the oven, the driver is in like on the way, and here we go, you have delicious food delivered. So this is example that exists. We can go to the other field, like pilot trainings, right? This is the digital twin of the more complicated systems, but it exists, I don't know how many years around us, because people need to have risk-free environment to do experimentation, and digital twin allows you to do various kind of mistakes and learn from them. Oh, maybe this is another angle to look at the digital twins of the value streams, is education, right? What if we're gonna make certain changes and they provide just local optimization? We assume that they give us improvement, but on the system level, it doesn't, and maybe create other interesting adverse effects. So, and doing this in a risk-free environment without harming people in a matter of a couple of minutes gives you interesting learning that you can apply moving forward and find better decisions. So yeah, I believe those are like two of my favorite examples: pilot training and Domino Pizza.
You just made my brain do another connection, which it hadn't done before, which was when I was doing a lot of DevOps consulting, one of the things I was doing was DevOps training and going through materials like the DevOps Foundation, talking about things like chaos engineering, and going to banks and people and explaining with chaos and engineering that we were purposefully breaking their infrastructure and their applications. And that obviously sometimes got a bit of a, whoa, why would we break the thing that we spend our whole lives trying to keep running kind of reaction? And I'd be like, well, you know, bear with us, because we're going to help you get to a level of stability with your systems where you can take those risks and they will be controlled. And lots of the people that I worked with when they first started experimenting with chaos engineering would do it in pre-production and not production, therefore by reducing the risk while they learned how to do those things. And as everybody's experiences and understanding about chaos and engineering kind of grew, we learned that it was not named very well because it wasn't really chaotic. What it was a controlled experiment within an environment, as you say, to simulate an outcome. And I used to offer, because my father was a pilot, he's retired now, but he used to spend, I used to think when I was a kid, an enormous amount, an unnecessary amount of time in the simulator. And then, of course, as you grow up and you fly more, and then you read stories like, I don't know if there was a story in the headlines today in the UK about a flight that left Mallorca, I think, a couple of days ago, flying to Austria, to Vienna, and they didn't catch a thunderstorm on the radar and they flew into it. And it was a really bad hailstorm. And it actually really destroyed the nose of the aircraft, and people that were passengers didn't realize that they were seeing bits of aircraft flying past the window. They just thought it was bits of ice. And it also pretty much destroyed the windscreen, so the pilots couldn't see. So they had to land using the instruments. They could possibly have used the autopilot. I actually went to India last year. Sorry, it's a bit of another diversion. I went to India last year, to Delhi, and it was very smoggy because all the farmers were burning the stubble in their fields. So the pilot actually, she was British Airways pilot, she landed the aircraft using the autopilot because she couldn't see the runway because it was the air was so filthy. Anyway, my point was, what I used to say to these people that were scared of doing chaos engineering was how important it is for pilots and stuff to do these exercises so that they explore the different scenarios of things that can go wrong, and they are prepared to take the remediating action that is going to save their system, and ultimately, in the case of an aircraft, save a lot of lives. Not everybody that works in the digital value streams have software that is going to necessarily have such catastrophic outcomes on human lives. Although sometimes I've been really surprised by companies where you think that it wasn't that important, and then you discover things like, I remember I was doing a message broker migration with a medical company, a pharmaceutical company, years ago. And I was like, yeah, well, what could go wrong? If it goes wrong, we'll just fix it. And they were like, no, but if this goes wrong, people could get the wrong medications, or they could not get the medication that they really need, or they might get the wrong dose. And actually that could be something that would cost lives. Anyway, you made a link with me, which was the chaos engineering VSM link, because there is actually quite a lot of parallels in that they are experimenting with outcomes effectively, and they're training the systems to become more resilient and better.
Yeah. And the same you can do with the value stream, right? Find a way how it's continuous journey. You need to continuously improve the productivity. Once you have the digital twin of value stream, right? It's not just a model that you build at once and make one improvement, but connect it to the data layer on the continuous basis. So you don't need to come back to this exercise over again. You already know where inefficiencies are, where the bottlenecks are, and you can experiment on, okay, what we're going to do, let's say next quarter, this change. And you verify that it works in the risk-free environment and apply it and see how it progress and control. It's in the real life. You can control how the implementation works. But yeah, interesting thing, like going back to this pilot journey that you explained, is that this pilot simulator have the causal model. This is a very important part, which I would encourage people to grasp, because when you do the data analytics and you want to predict the outcome, it's better to have the causality behind the data. It's not just kind of simple extrapolation of the data, because it doesn't give you there is no let me give you an example. Let's imagine you have the value stream that has lead time, I don't know, between 10 and 12 days, and once upon a time the lead time increased, let's say, to 15 to 20 days. And looking at the data set and even building like training a neural network to find how you can project future performance of this value stream, it doesn't give you answer of what causes that. It might be the case that you have a new model to be integrated, you switch to different platform, different technology, like who knows what happened. But it's better to have the causal model that can reflect it and can put those assumptions into the model, and you can have more predictable,
actionable insight. Yeah.
Actionable, right? Yeah, it's more than data. It's also a causal model.
So we need to very sadly wind this up, because I'm sure we could talk for a lot longer, and there will be other opportunities as well. But assuming that not everyone on the call is already simulating their value streams, what would your recommendation be to get started? Do they need to have certain things in place already, or is there something they can do quite quickly today?
It's easy to do today. If you already done the value stream map, It's a matter of maybe a couple of minutes. Maybe like if you're not familiar with the modeling, it might take, I don't know, 30 minutes to create the model and start simulation and get what if analysis of how you can improve your value stream. It's very simple.
And we need to go and download something from VS Optima, I guess.
You can sign up for free. There's a free tier account that you can build simple models. If you need more complicated models or run simulation under longer period of time, multiple simulations, you need to have a professional account. But it should be good enough to get started for free. Just sign up. It's a publicly available SaaS platform.
I have added that to the chat. Thank you so much for your time today, Pavel. It's been wonderful to talk to you. It's always a pleasure, and you always make my brain kind of go, oh, yeah, it's just understood something again.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to share the experience with the community of value stream. Thank you.
Thank you, audience. We'll see you sometime, somewhere again, sometime soon, but goodbye for now. Bye, Pavel.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks and goodbye.